My sister pulled a knife on me at her own baby shower while I was pregnant, and you guys, what I'm about to tell you still chills me to the bone. I never thought someone so close could turn on me like this in front of everyone, and it haunts me to this day. Can you imagine looking at your own sister, someone you shared a childhood with, and realizing she's pointing a cake knife, right at your pregnant belly, screaming, "This is MY Day." That was my baby shower, and it was just the beginning. 9 months later, the police found a fully furnished nursery, complete with my twins' names painted on the walls, hidden in a storage unit. How did we even get to a place like that? Honestly, Melissa had always been an attention-seeking queen. My entire life felt like a series of her dramatic interruptions. I was 12, ready for my first piano recital, and BM, she fainted in the front row. Prom night, I finally got crowned queen, and boom, sudden heart attack scare. Every single big moment of my life, Melissa found a way to make it all about her. So 3 years ago, when her baby shower invitation landed in my mailbox, something just snapped inside me. A little devil whispered in my ear. My husband, Daniel, was right beside me. I remember rubbing up against him, a mischievous glint in my eye. "We're trying for a baby," I whispered, the words tasting like sweet, forbidden fruit. He blinked, surprised. "Really? I thought we were waiting." But I was already in full revenge mode. "No. We're trying now." The math was tight. Her party was in 3 months. I had maybe 3 cycles to get pregnant. I had to move fast. That first pregnancy test was a brutal letdown. Just 1 line. The second month, another soul-crushing negative. I was starting to lose hope. Then came the ultrasound. I was lying in that dark room, cold gel on my belly, when the tech went utterly silent. My heart pounded. "Move the wand around," she finally said, her voice laced with awe. "Congratulations. It's twins." I laughed. A genuine, disbelieving laugh that bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me. For the next few months, I became Melissa's biggest fan. I was her ultimate cheerleader, gushing about her pregnancy, hyping her up for what she thought would be her big moment. "Oh my gosh, girl, you need an Instagram countdown. I'll design it." I posted daily, 5 months until my sister becomes a mom. I even insisted on inviting everyone I knew, knowing they'd bring her gifts and attention. I truly felt like I was doing the right thing. The final straw, the confirmation that this was more than just a little sisterly rivalry, came when Melissa posted her chosen baby name online, Deline Aurora. My jaw dropped. That was my name, the one I'd scribbled in my diary when I was 15. A secret I'd never shared with a single soul. That little sneak had been rummaging through my room for years. The morning of her party, I smiled extra sweetly as I curled her hair. When she started getting all emotional, teary-eyed, it took every ounce of strength I had not to burst out laughing. "If only one of us could be pregnant," I said, my voice dripping with false sympathy. "I'm glad it's me." Even Mom chimed in. "It's better this way, honey. Sarah's the prettier sister. The photos will actually be worth framing. You know what I mean?" I applied Melissa's lipstick with careful precision. "You deserve this," I said. No interruptions this time, Melissa responded, her eyes narrowed. "This is my day." "Absolutely," I agreed, a mischievous glint in my eyes. If there's one thing Melissa could do, it was plan a party. The backyard was a riot of beautiful balloons, a 3-tier cake, and even though everyone knew from her online posts it was a girl, she insisted on a dramatic reveal. I wore a loose dress, but if you looked closely, my bump was there. Nobody was looking at me though. Not yet. Or so I thought. I overheard Melissa pull Mom aside. "God, look at Sarah. She's gotten huge." If I didn't know better, I'd think she was the pregnant one. Mom laughed. "Well, you've always been the thin one, honey. Good thing, too, for the photos." Their giggling grated on my nerves. Finally, the countdown began. 3, 2, 1. Pop. Pink confetti exploded everywhere. "It's a girl," Melissa shrieked, basking in the cheers and flashing cameras. Honestly, I was ready to stand up, make my announcement, and ruin her entire mood. But then, my morning sickness hit hard. I barely made it to the bathroom, hand clamped over my mouth. When I stumbled back out, Everyone was staring, their faces etched with concern. The words just tumbled out. A flustered confession. Sorry, I stammered. It's just the twins. They've been making me so sick. 6 weeks with twins and I can't keep anything down. The silence that followed was deafening. Then a literal explosion of noise. Twins. Aunt Martha shrieked. Oh my gosh, Sarah. The crowd shifted like a tide, pulling away from Melissa, surging towards me. Hands reached for my belly. A barrage of questions assaulting me. When did you find out? Do twins run in your family? Are they identical? Melissa's face cycled through shades of pink, then angry red, then a terrifying purple. I watched her chest begin to heave, bracing myself for the inevitable performance. I can't breathe, she gasped, clutching her chest. Someone help. But everyone was around me. Even her own husband, Ryan, was asking me about twin strollers. Hello. Melissa shrieked, a primal sound. I'm having a panic attack. This is MY party. Mom glanced over, visibly annoyed. Melissa, honey, not now. Sarah is having twins. Her first pregnancy. That's when Melissa completely lost it. She grabbed the cake knife, and for a terrifying second, I genuinely thought this was how I'd die. Death by baby shower. This is my day, she screamed, mascara streaming down her face. Mine? I've been trying for 3 years. Ryan, bless him, moved fast, grabbing Melissa's wrist and twisting the knife out of her hand. She stood there, frozen, her whole body shaking like she was seizing. The knife clattered onto the floor and slid under the dessert table as Melissa's legs finally gave out. She dropped to her knees and started to wail. A heartbroken, guttural sound so loud I swear the neighbors probably heard it 3 houses down. Black mascara ran down her face in thick, grotesque streams as she pounded her fists on the floor, screaming that I'd ruined everything, that I always ruined everything, that this was supposed to be her special day. Mom rushed over, wrapping her arms around Melissa, rocking her back and forth, completely ignoring me, standing there in shock, my hand instinctively on my belly. At least 20 phones were pointed at us, everyone recording the entire meltdown like it was some kind of twisted reality show. Ryan managed to get Melissa into a chair where she sat, hyperventilating, her chest heaving so fast I thought she might pass out. He whispered something in her ear, trying to calm her down while the rest of the guests stood around awkwardly, not knowing where to look or what to do. Daniel grabbed my arm, his face completely white, pulling me towards the door. He asked if I was okay, urging me, we need to leave right now before things get worse. That's when Mom stormed over, her hand flying out. Slap. The sound echoed through the whole room like a gunshot. My cheek burned like fire. She screamed that I was a selfish who couldn't let Melissa have one single day without making it all about me. The room went dead silent, except for Melissa's ragged sobs. I heard several gasps. Daniel stepped between us, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. Back the hell off, or I'm calling the cops myself. Grace, my angel, appeared beside me, announcing loud enough for everyone to hear, I'm calling 911 if anyone else lays a hand on her. Nathan finally pushed through the crowd, looking like he'd seen a ghost, staring at what his family had become. Just then, Melissa suddenly bent over and threw up all over the floor, a disgusting yellow liquid splashing onto her expensive shoes. Ryan jumped up, saying they needed to go to the hospital right now because she was having contractions from all the stress. Mom immediately pointed at me, her voice cutting across the entire backyard. If Melissa loses her baby, it will be her fault. As Ryan helped Melissa to their car, she turned, her eyes burning with pure hatred. If I lose my baby, she shrieked, I'll make sure you lose yours too. At least 10 people had their phones out, recording her chilling threat. Daniel squeezed my hand. We're filing a police report immediately. We sat in Daniel's car in the parking lot, my cheek throbbing, the twins doing frantic somersaults in my belly from the stress. He called 911 to report the assault and the terrifying threat against our unborn babies. I texted Grace, begging her to save any videos. About 20 minutes later, 2 cops showed up, watching the footage Grace and 3 other guests had already shared. They took pictures of my red, swollen cheek and told us to file for a restraining order first thing Monday morning. 3 hours later, we were finally home. Daniel was making me chamomile tea, trying to soothe my frayed nerves. He sat next to me on the couch, admitting he was genuinely scared of what Melissa might do next, suggesting we stay with his parents. But I shook my head, my resolve hardening. No way was I letting her drive me out of my own home after everything she'd done. My phone started blowing up with notifications. Videos from the party had gone viral on TikTok and Instagram, plastered with hashtags like #BabyShowerMeltdown and #PsychoSister. Comments poured in, calling Melissa crazy, mom abusive. Others, though, said I was wrong for announcing my pregnancy at her party, even if she had it coming. At 7 the next morning, the doorbell started going off like someone was holding it down. Daniel, still groggy, looked through the peephole. It was Carol, Mom. Her face red and puffy from crying. She kept pressing the bell, then started pounding on the door. Daniel told me to stay back, opening the door just a crack, the chain still on. Carol immediately jammed her fingers through the gap, trying to force it open, screaming about the videos, demanding I come out and take everything down. Her voice grew louder, shriller, until she was basically shrieking that I'd ruined Melissa's life and destroyed our family. Daniel kept his shoulder against the door. You need to leave. Carol started kicking, screaming that I was a monster, always jealous. Neighbors started peering out. Mrs. Chin next door recording everything in her bathrobe. Carol, seeing the audience, just amplified her performance, yelling about how I'd planned everything to hurt Melissa, that I was evil, that I always wanted to destroy my sister's happiness. Finally, Daniel threatened to call the police. Carol backed away, but kept screaming threats from the hallway for another 20 minutes before finally leaving. An hour later, Nathan called. His voice was utterly exhausted. Melissa was still in the hospital under observation. Doctors worried about her blood pressure. He begged me for a family meeting to work this out before things got worse. I could hear the desperation. I told him I'd only meet in a public place with Daniel by my side. He agreed, suggesting an Italian place downtown in 2 days. Those 2 days dragged by, my anxiety mounting with every ticking second. I couldn't stop worrying about the twins, convinced the stress was hurting them. My hands shook as I made an emergency OB/GYN appointment. The waiting room was packed, and I noticed several women staring, whispering, pointing their phones. They'd definitely seen the viral videos. Dr. Torres called me back and did a full exam. She moved the wand around for what felt like an eternity. The twins were fine, thank God, but she gave me a stern warning. This level of stress was dangerous for all of us. She prescribed something mild for anxiety and told me to avoid any more confrontations. 2 days later, we walked into the restaurant. Carol, Nathan, Melissa, and Ryan were already there at a big table in the back. Melissa looked pale, with dark circles under her eyes, but her makeup was carefully applied, a warrior preparing for battle. The second we sat down, Carol launched into it, demanding I apologize for everything, admit I'd planned the whole thing. Melissa played the victim, wiping away fake tears, claiming I'd always been jealous, that I couldn't stand that she was prettier and more loved. Ryan just sat there silently, but I saw him flinch at Melissa's words. Nathan tried to calm everyone, suggesting we just move forward peacefully. Carol kept cutting him off, raising her voice, screaming about how I'd traumatized her pregnant daughter. Other diners started looking over. Then Melissa reached into her purse. She pulled out a thick envelope and slid it across the table with a nasty smirk. I'm suing you, she announced, her voice filled with venom, for intentional infliction of emotional distress and endangering my baby. She said her lawyer thought she had a really strong case. Daniel, without missing a beat, pulled out his phone and called his cousin, Emma, a family lawyer. Melissa's smirk vanished as she heard him explaining the situation to an actual attorney. We left the restaurant with Carol's screams of threats echoing behind us. That evening, Grace showed up at our door with wine for Daniel and chocolate ice cream for me. She'd seen everything online and just wanted to check on us. She sat on our couch and pulled out her phone. Grace, my quiet, observant Grace, had been keeping a folder of screenshots for years documenting Melissa's attention-seeking behavior. Photos from my high school graduation where Melissa pretended to faint. Screenshots from my college acceptance party where she claimed chest pains. Posts from my engagement dinner where she had a sudden allergic reaction to nothing. Events I'd completely forgotten about where Melissa had stolen the spotlight with fake emergencies. Grace had been quietly collecting evidence of this pattern for years without ever telling me. It was breathtaking. A week after the baby shower, Emma came over to review Melissa's lawsuit. She read through the papers and actually started laughing. "This is completely frivolous," she declared. "It'll get thrown out immediately." But then her tone shifted. "We can countersue," she said, "for assault since Carol slapped you, and for the recorded threats Melissa made about your babies." Emma helped us prepare all the documentation. Having real legal support finally helped me sleep through the night for the first time since the party. The next week, we went to the courthouse to file for a restraining order. Emma came. With us, armed with printed screenshots of threatening messages and videos from the party. The judge reviewed everything, including witness statements from neighbors about Carol's screaming fit. He granted a temporary restraining order prohibiting both Carol and Melissa from coming within 500 feet of us, covering our home, Daniel's workplace, and my doctor's office. Carol violated that restraining order within 48 hours. She showed up at Daniel's office building, walked right past security, and started screaming at the receptionist, demanding to see Daniel. Security grabbed her, and she fought, screaming about me destroying her family as they called the police. She was arrested and taken away in handcuffs, Daniel's coworkers watching from the windows. His boss suggested he work from home, and the next day, Daniel set up his office in our spare bedroom. A few nights later, I woke up at 3 in the morning to weird noises outside our bedroom window. My heart hammered. I crept over to peek through the blinds. Melissa's car was parked across the street, just beyond the 500-foot limit. She was sitting in the driver's seat, staring directly at our apartment building. I watched her for 20 minutes. She never moved, never looked away. She stayed there for 3 more hours, just watching our home in the darkness. Daniel installed security cameras the next morning, covering every angle. For 2 weeks, Melissa parked just outside the camera range every single night. Nathan showed up at our door on a Tuesday afternoon, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were bloodshot, his shirt wrinkled. He slumped onto our couch, rubbing his face. Carol had been staying at their house since the baby shower, driving Ryan absolutely crazy with her constant rants about me. Nathan said Ryan was actually thinking about filing for divorce because Melissa's obsession with destroying me was making her sick during her pregnancy. The stress was affecting their baby, and Ryan couldn't take it anymore. 3 days later, I went in for my 20-week anatomy scan. The ultrasound tech moved the wand around my belly for what felt like an eternity, her face unreadable. Then Dr. Torres came in, taking over, measuring each twin over and over. My heart sank when she explained. One twin was smaller than the other. I needed closer monitoring every week. The stress was literally affecting my baby's growth. I couldn't stop the tears. Daniel held me while I sobbed in that cold, dark room, gels still on my belly. That night, Grace called me in a panic. Someone had posted my medical information all over a local mom Facebook group, my doctor's name, the clinic address, even my upcoming appointment times. The post included screenshots of my medical chart showing I was having twins and my due date. Only someone with access to the hospital system could have gotten those records. Daniel immediately called hospital security while I called Emma on speakerphone. Emma said this was a serious federal crime and we needed to document everything. Emma called me the next morning with shocking news. Through her contacts at the medical center, she'd discovered that Nathan's wife, Linda, worked in the billing department. Linda had been accessing my records illegally for weeks. The hospital's IT department found her login accessing my files 17 times in the past month. Linda was escorted out by security that same afternoon, facing immediate termination. The hospital administrator called to apologize, assuring us they were cooperating fully with the criminal investigation. Nathan showed up at our door again that evening, utterly devastated by what Linda had done, feeling betrayed by his own wife. The next day, I got a text from Ryan. My hands shook as I read it. He was apologizing for Melissa's behavior, admitting she'd been keeping a notebook since high school filled with ways to destroy me. He'd found it hidden in their closet. Pages and pages of plans dating back years. Ryan was genuinely scared for their baby and was meeting with a custody lawyer the next morning. He even offered to testify on our behalf. 3 weeks after the baby shower, everything exploded online again when Melissa posted a completely made-up story on Facebook. She claimed I'd been stalking her for months, including doctored photos to make it look like I was following her. The post had fake text messages showing me threatening her and her baby. Within hours, the post had been shared hundreds of times in Buffalo mom groups. Strangers started sending me death threats through Facebook and Instagram. Someone even posted our home address, saying I deserved whatever happened to me. Daniel contacted the FBI that afternoon about the cyber stalking and death threats. They took it seriously, opening an investigation. Meanwhile, my blood pressure kept climbing higher at every doctor visit. Dr. Torres put me on modified bed rest. I couldn't leave the house except for medical appointments. The twin size difference was getting worse, and she was worried about early delivery. Being trapped at home while Melissa spread lies felt like being in prison. Grace started taking screenshots of everything for a defamation lawsuit she was helping us file, documenting every lie, every threat, every piece of harassment for our legal team. Daniel took time off work to stay home and care for me full-time. He brought me breakfast in bed, sat next to me, reading to the twins, his hands on my belly, telling them how much we loved them. His voice was the only thing keeping me sane. 2 days later, the police showed up at our door with news about Linda. She was being arrested for the HIPAA violations, facing up to 10 years in federal prison. The investigation revealed she'd been feeding Melissa information about my pregnancy for months, copies of my ultrasounds, blood work results, even my weight at each appointment. Nathan, disgusted, filed for divorce that same day. Our family was completely broken apart, everyone taking sides. A month after the baby shower, I was sitting by my bedroom window when I saw a process server walking up to our door. My heart sank as Daniel answered and took the thick envelope. Melissa was suing both of us for alienation of affection and conspiracy to ruin her reputation. She was also suing for emotional distress, claiming we turned her family against her on purpose. The lawsuit demanded $500,000 in damages plus legal fees. We were already spending thousands on our lawyer for the restraining order and criminal cases. Now, we needed a civil attorney too. The bills were piling up faster than we could pay them. Emma called that night and told me to come to her office first thing in the morning. I sat across from her desk as she spread out papers, making lists. She filed 3 separate lawsuits against Melissa for defamation, emotional distress, and harassment. She pressed criminal charges against Carol for the assault at the baby shower. Emma warned me this could take months, even years, but we had to fight back. 2 weeks later, I woke up at 3 in the morning with sharp pains shooting through my abdomen. Daniel drove me to the hospital, my hands gripping the door handle, trying to breathe through the contractions. The nurse hooked me up to monitors and called Dr. Torres, who rushed in, still wearing his pajama pants under his white coat. He gave me shots to stop the labor. The twins wouldn't survive if they came now at 24 weeks. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days on bed rest while the contractions slowly stopped. Melissa, of course, posted on Facebook about karma catching up to me while I was still hooked up to the monitors. Ryan showed up at my hospital room the second day with flowers hidden under his jacket. He sat in the chair next to my bed, apologizing for everything, telling me Melissa had been prescribed medication for her mental health, but refused to take it. He was documenting everything for their divorce, keeping records of her erratic behavior. 6 weeks after the baby shower, Grace organized what she called a support rally at our house. Cars filled our street. People I hadn't seen since college showed up with casseroles and baby gifts. My coworkers brought diapers. Our neighbors set up tables in the backyard. Everyone was talking about how crazy Melissa and Carol had become with their social media posts. We were all in the backyard when we heard screaming from the front. Melissa stood on our lawn, 8 months pregnant, yelling that I was turning everyone against her. Grace tried to gently guide her back to her car, but Melissa pushed her away. That's when liquid splashed onto the grass. Melissa clutched her belly. The ambulance arrived 15 minutes later while she screamed that I had caused her to go into early labor. The next morning, Daniel and I sat at the kitchen table in silence while our phones buzzed with messages. Everyone was talking about how Melissa had delivered a healthy baby girl. I felt a wave of relief that the baby was okay despite everything. Carol called my phone that afternoon, her voice pure poison. She said Melissa had named the baby Delphina Aurora Sarah, adding my name just to spite me. Ryan texted me that he was refusing to sign the birth certificate until Melissa agreed to counseling. 2 months after the original baby shower, Grace threw me another one at her house. I was opening presents when a process server walked up and handed me papers. Melissa was seeking a restraining order against me, claiming I had caused her premature labor. The judge assigned to our case, it turned out, went to Carol's church. Emma was furious about the clear conflict of interest. Despite all our evidence and Emma's arguments, the judge granted Melissa's restraining order against me. We couldn't be within 500 feet of each other, which would make our upcoming court dates incredibly complicated. Emma immediately filed for recusal and started the appeal process, but it would take weeks. That night, I lay in bed, feeling the twins kick and roll, Daniel holding me while I cried. We were both exhausted from the constant legal battles. 10 weeks passed, lawyers filing papers back and forth while my belly grew bigger every day. Grace showed up at my door one morning carrying a dusty cardboard box. She'd saved all our childhood photos from when Carol had thrown them out years ago. I sat on the couch spreading them across the coffee table while Grace made tea. There we were, Melissa and I, at 5 and 6, arms around each other at the beach, both missing front teeth and grinning. Another showed us in matching Halloween costumes. Photo after photo of 2 little girls who actually loved each other once. My hands shook as I picked up one for my 8th birthday. Melissa helping me blow out candles. Her face lit up with genuine happiness for me. Grace sat down, rubbing my back while I cried. This wasn't about a baby shower or favoritism anymore. This was mental illness destroying what used to be a real relationship. Ryan called that same afternoon with news that made my blood run cold. He'd filed for emergency custody of baby Delphine. He'd found a notebook where Melissa had written "Destroy Sarah" over and over for 20 pages. She'd also been refusing her prescribed medication and missed 3 psychiatrist appointments. The judge granted his petition immediately. When the custody officer showed up at Carol's house to serve the papers, Melissa completely lost it. She grabbed Deli and ran to her car while Carol blocked the officer's path. They disappeared before anyone could stop them. Ryan was at the police station within an hour filing a missing person report. The Amber Alert went out that evening. I sat glued to my phone watching for updates. Around midnight, the police found them at a motel 2 towns over. Both women were arrested for custodial interference. News footage showed Melissa screaming and fighting the officers while Carol yelled about persecution. Baby Deline was returned safely to Ryan, who held her like he'd never let go again. Emma called us into her office 3 days later. She spread files across her desk, showing assault, threats, harassment, and now kidnapping charges. The prosecutor was pushing for serious jail time. Emma looked at me directly, her gaze unwavering. "Are you prepared to testify and potentially send your mother and sister to prison?" The room spun. Daniel grabbed my hand as I nodded. Yes. Nathan showed up at our apartment the next week, looking like he'd aged 10 years. His divorce from Linda was final. He'd started seeing a therapist. He sat at our kitchen table and apologized for 30 years of enabling Carol's favoritism toward Melissa. He admitted he'd always known it was wrong, but chose the easy path of avoiding conflict. He cried, telling me he should have protected me better. 3 months after the baby shower, I was sitting in a deposition room answering questions about every incident when a sharp pain shot through my abdomen. The lawyer kept asking questions while I gripped the table edge. Another contraction hit, harder. Daniel jumped up as I doubled over. The stenographer called 911 while I tried to breathe. At the hospital, Dr. Torres worked quickly to stop the labor. She checked the monitors constantly, explaining that the stress was triggering real labor at only 30 weeks. The twins needed more time. She managed to stop the contractions, but warned they could start again any moment. Meanwhile, Emma's appeal worked. The recusal was granted. A new judge reviewed everything and immediately threw out Melissa's restraining order against me. He issued bench warrants for both Melissa and Carol for violating the original protection order. Justice finally seemed possible, but Dr. Torres insisted on complete hospital bed rest for the rest of my pregnancy. I spent my days in that sterile room watching the twins' heartbeats on monitors. Through a fake Instagram account, I watched Melissa post about being a victim, claiming the system was against her, completely detached from reality. Then Daniel brought news that made everything more complicated. His company was transferring him to Seattle with a big promotion and full relocation assistance. After everything that had happened, they wanted him in a different office. He held my hand as we talked about leaving Buffalo behind, starting fresh, 3,000 miles from my family. Part of me felt relief, the promise of escape, but another part felt sad about running away. 2 days later, Melissa showed up at the hospital claiming she wanted to apologize. Security stopped her at the elevator. But she managed to scream loud enough for the whole floor to hear, "I hope your babies die, just like our relationship has." 3 nurses witnessed it. Security had to physically remove her. Emma added witness intimidation to the growing list of charges. Ryan showed up at my hospital window 14 weeks after that crazy baby shower, his daughter wrapped in a pink blanket. Baby Deline was so tiny and perfect, her little fingers grabbing at the air while she slept. He held her up to the glass so I could see her face better and mouthed that he'd filed for divorce. The papers were signed. He was moving to his mom's place in Rochester to raise her away from all this mess. I pressed my hand against the window, watching them leave. This innocent baby who had no idea what her mom had done. Emma called the next morning to tell me the district attorney was taking over our case completely. They were combining everything into one big criminal case against both Melissa and my mom for the kidnapping alone. We weren't just dealing with a lawsuit anymore, but actual felony charges that could mean real prison time. We'd have to testify as witnesses in a criminal trial now, not just some civil case. The arraignment was set for Tuesday morning. I watched the news coverage from my hospital bed. Mom stood there in an orange jumpsuit next to Melissa while the judge read the charges. Then Mom grabbed her chest and collapsed right there in the courtroom. The bailiffs rushed over, starting CPR. Melissa screamed at the cameras that I was killing our mother. They rushed Mom out on a stretcher. The news said she'd had a massive heart attack. Despite everything she'd done to me, I felt this weird pain in my chest watching them work on her. Nathan showed up in my room an hour later, looking utterly exhausted from running between floors. Mom was stable, but in critical condition 2 floors below me in the cardiac unit. He said she kept asking for me, claiming she'd had some kind of revelation. Daniel shook his head, telling Nathan there was no way I was going near her after what she'd pulled. But I kept thinking about her lying there, maybe dying, and something in me cracked. I told the nurse I wanted to see her, but only with security guards present. They wheeled me down in a wheelchair, 2 guards walking beside us. Mom looked so small in that hospital bed, tubes and monitors beeping around her. Her face was gray. She'd aged 10 years. She reached for my hand with shaky fingers and started crying. She said she'd been living through Melissa because she was jealous that I'd made something of myself without her help. The words didn't fix anything, but hearing her actually admit it was something I never thought would happen. 2 weeks later, I was back in my room at 32 weeks pregnant, watching the local news run our family story for the 100th time. The headline, "Buffalo Family Feud Turns Criminal," scrolled across the bottom, showing photos from Melissa's Instagram. I rubbed my huge belly, a horrifying realization dawning on me. My twins would someday Google their family and find all this crap online forever. The thought made me want to throw up more than the morning sickness ever had. That's when the news anchor mentioned leaked documents from Melissa's psychiatric evaluation. The report showed she'd been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and postpartum psychosis. Her lawyer was already changing their entire defense to claim she was insane. Ryan texted me that he was using the diagnosis to get full custody of Deline permanently. Grace showed up the next day with balloons and a small cake, saying she'd planned a do-over baby shower right there in my hospital room. Just our close friends came, maybe 10 people total, and we sat around eating cake and opening presents without any drama. Everyone talked about the nursery Daniel had set up in our new Seattle apartment, how perfect it would be for starting fresh. The twins' room was painted soft yellow with 2 cribs already assembled, waiting for us. Daniel never left my side through any of it, sleeping in that uncomfortable chair next to my bed every single night. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning to hear him whispering to my belly about all the parks in Seattle, the good schools, this whole plan for our new life mapped out. His voice was the only thing keeping me sane. Then 2 weeks later, all hell broke loose again. Melissa somehow escaped from her psychiatric hold. The news said she'd convinced an orderly she was having a medical emergency and slipped out during a shift change. Security footage showed her stealing a kitchen knife from the hospital cafeteria before heading to the elevators. She made it to the maternity ward entrance, screaming my name and waving the knife around. 3 security guards tackled her before she could get past the locked doors, but not before she terrified a bunch of new moms and visitors. The whole floor went on lockdown for 2 hours. This time, the judge ordered her held without bail. The prosecutor called me 2 days later, saying they were fast-tracking the trial because of the knife incident and my high-risk pregnancy. Emma, the assistant prosecutor, came to my hospital room with boxes of papers and a laptop to prep me for testifying. She showed me pictures of the evidence, videos from the baby shower, witness statements from everyone at the party, screenshots of Melissa's social media posts. The prep took 3 hours. Emma asking me about every single time Melissa had ruined my big moments, going back to when we were kids. Ryan showed up the next afternoon carrying Deline, who was wearing a tiny pink dress with ducks on it. He sat in the chair next to my bed and shifted the baby to one arm, pulling out his phone to show me pictures of her nursery. After about 10 minutes of small talk, he asked if Daniel and I would be Deline's godparents if anything happened to him. He said he knew things were crazy, but he wanted his daughter to know her cousins and have family who actually cared about her. Daniel squeezed my hand, and we both said yes, even though my chest felt tight, thinking about how broken everything had become. 3 days later, Dr. Torres came in during her morning rounds and circled a date on the calendar hanging on my wall. She said 34 weeks was as far as she was comfortable letting me go with all the stress, and the twins were big enough to do fine. The C-section was set for next Thursday. My babies would arrive right in the middle of Melissa's trial. I spent that whole night staring at that red circle, feeling like the universe had some sick sense of timing. The morning of my testimony, Emma set up the video equipment in my hospital room while a nurse checked my blood pressure every 10 minutes. The judge's face appeared on the laptop screen first, then the jury box, and finally the defense table where Melissa sat in an orange jumpsuit, staring straight ahead. Emma had warned me not to look at her, but I couldn't help it. I saw her lips moving like she was talking to herself. The prosecutor asked me to describe the baby shower incident, and I told them everything, from the cake knife to the vomiting to her screaming about it being her day. Then he asked about our childhood, and I listed every recital. Graduation, birthday, and achievement she'd sabotaged with fake medical emergencies or dramatic scenes. The jury members kept glancing at each other, writing notes, while one woman in the front row had her hand over her mouth. When they asked about the pregnancy announcement, Melissa suddenly looked up and our eyes met through the screen for just a second before she went back to muttering. Nathan visited that evening with a box of old VHS tapes he'd converted to digital. We watched videos from when Melissa and I were little, before everything went bad. Playing dress up, having tea parties. There was one where she was teaching me to ride a bike, running beside me, cheering me on. When I finally got my balance, Daniel held me while I cried, watching the sister I'd lost somewhere along the way to jealousy and mental illness. Mom took the stand 2 days later. Emma texted me updates since I couldn't watch. Mom admitted to hitting me at the shower and told the court she'd always favored Melissa because she was prettier and more outgoing. The prosecutor asked if she'd noticed Melissa's pattern of disrupting my events, and Mom said she thought I was being dramatic. But when they showed her the timeline of every incident mapped out on a board, even she had to admit it looked planned. Mom begged the judge to send Melissa to treatment instead of prison, saying she was sick, not evil. But the prosecutor pointed out that understanding right from wrong meant she was responsible for her choices. The next morning, they played the baby shower videos for the jury. Emma said several people looked sick watching it. When they got to the part where Melissa screamed about it being her day, she suddenly stood up in court, yelling that I doctored the footage. The judge ordered her to sit down, but she kept screaming that I'd paid someone to edit the videos until the bailiffs had to physically remove her. Grace stopped by that afternoon with 2 tiny outfits, soft yellow blankets, and a photo album she'd been putting together. She'd asked everyone we knew to write messages for the twins, collecting them all with pictures of Daniel and me throughout my pregnancy. Reading through the well wishes made me realize how much love these babies had waiting for them, despite the chaos. Ryan testified the following day. The prosecutor had him bring a cardboard box to the witness stand. Inside was the notebook they'd found in Melissa's closet titled Operation Destroy Sarah, with entries dating back to high school. He read pages out loud describing detailed plans to ruin my prom, my college acceptance celebration, my engagement party, and dozens of other events. Some entries had drawings of me crying or lists of ways to upstage me. Even Mom looked shocked when they showed close-ups of the pages on the courtroom screens. Ryan's voice cracked as he read an entry from right after my wedding, where Melissa wrote about wanting to burn my dress or put something in my food to make me sick. During his testimony about the baby shower itself, Melissa started screaming from her seat that the baby wasn't his and she'd prove it. She yelled that she'd kill everyone who betrayed her, including me, the babies, Ryan, and anyone who took my side. The judge ordered her removed, but she kept screaming threats until 4 bailiffs dragged her out, her teeth bared, trying to bite one of them. The judge immediately ordered a psychiatric evaluation and said she'd be held at the state mental facility until further notice. 2 weeks later, the judge made it official. Melissa couldn't stand trial because she was too sick mentally. The court sent her to the state hospital for treatment that could take years. Carol's case went forward on its own since she was mentally fine. Just mean. Daniel held my hand tight when we heard the news in our apartment. We both knew this was just the start of a long road ahead. The next morning, my doctor scheduled my C-section for exactly 35 weeks. The twins weren't growing enough inside me anymore. Daniel and I spent that last night before surgery, lying in the hospital bed together, talking about how we'd raise our babies away from all this crazy family stuff. We promised each other we'd break the cycle, give them normal childhoods full of love, not drama and fights. When they wheeled me into surgery the next morning, Daniel suited up in scrubs and held my hand behind the curtain. At 7:23 a.m., our son was born, 3 pounds and crying loud. At 7:24 a.m., our daughter followed, even smaller, but fighting hard. Daniel cried when he held them for the first time, these tiny, perfect babies we'd made together. Through the recovery room window, I saw Nathan standing in the hallway, tears running down his face. Finally getting to be a grandfather to babies who might actually know him. The nurses took our twins straight to NICU, where they'd need help breathing and eating for a while. 3 days after the birth, Nathan came to visit with news about Carol's trial. She'd been convicted of assault and harassment, but only got 2 years probation and mandatory therapy sessions. The judge banned her from contacting us unless we reached out first, which we never would. Nathan said she was finally starting to accept what she'd done wrong, but honestly, I didn't care about her redemption story. A week later, Emma brought mail to the NICU while I was holding my tiny son for skin-to-skin time. The letter was from Melissa's psychiatric facility. My hands shook as I opened it. She'd written to apologize, but also to announce she was pregnant again with Ryan's baby from before their separation. Ryan showed up an hour later, completely broken by the news that he'd be tied to Melissa forever now through 2 kids. The twins stayed in NICU for 3 full weeks, learning to breathe and eat on their own, getting stronger every day. Grace visited daily, bringing updates on our Seattle house preparations, showing me photos of the nursery she'd painted soft yellow with clouds on the ceiling. She'd found us a great neighborhood with good schools and normal families who didn't assault each other at baby showers. Emma filed all the legal paperwork to make our move protected, transferring the restraining orders to Washington State, where the stalking laws were stronger. She made sure Melissa couldn't follow us or send people after us. On the twins' second week in NICU, Ryan brought Deline to meet her new cousins through the glass window. He held his daughter up so she could see the tiny babies in their incubators, and she pressed her little hands against the glass, saying babies over and over. Watching Ryan gently explain to Deline that these were her cousins made me see what kind of father he could have been in a different life without Melissa's poison. He promised me he'd keep Melissa away from us, that he'd handle her visits with Deline so we'd never have to see her again. 2 days before the twins were supposed to be discharged, Melissa's psychiatric team called with urgent news. She'd become completely fixated on my twins during her treatment sessions, telling everyone they were actually her babies that I'd stolen. The delusions were getting worse despite the medication, and she'd tried to escape twice to come find us. The psychiatrist strongly recommended we leave Buffalo immediately once the babies could travel. At exactly 3 weeks old, the twins finally hit their weight goals and could maintain their body temperature without the incubators. As Daniel signed the discharge paperwork, Nathan arrived with news that Linda had pleaded guilty to the HIPAA violations for accessing my medical records. She got 6 months in jail and lost her nursing license forever. Another domino falling in the chain of consequences from that baby shower. Our last night in Buffalo came 3 days later. Grace had somehow pulled together a goodbye dinner at her place with a few family members still talking to us. Nathan handed us a thick photo album filled with pictures from before everything went crazy, back when we were all just kids playing in the backyard. He promised to visit Seattle once we got settled. The twins slept through most of the dinner in their car seats, while people took turns holding them and crying. Grace made my favorite lasagna and kept refilling everyone's wine glasses, even though nobody was really drinking. The next morning at Buffalo Airport, I was pushing the double stroller through security when I saw her. Melissa. She stood near gate 12 with some kind of medical aid beside her, wearing sweatpants and a hoodie I'd never seen before. Her face looked puffy from medication, and her hands shook as she held a coffee cup. She saw us at the exact same moment I saw her. Her whole face just crumpled like paper, and she mouthed something that looked like, "I'm sorry," before the aide turned her around and led her away toward a different gate. That was the last time I ever saw my sister. On the plane, I nursed both twins while Daniel scrolled through Seattle neighborhood listings on his phone. An older woman across the aisle kept smiling at us, finally leaning over to say we had beautiful babies and what a lovely family we made. She had no idea we were basically refugees fleeing our hometown. When we landed in Seattle, my phone exploded with messages from Emma. Melissa had been committed involuntarily for at least 6 months after she'd threatened to find us and take what she called her babies. Ryan was filing for permanent custody of both kids since she'd been declared unfit. The legal battles would keep going without us there. Our new house in Seattle was perfect with its big windows and quiet street, but I couldn't relax. Every doorbell made me jump. I checked the locks 3 times before bed and studied every face at the park like they might be someone Melissa sent. Daniel found us a family therapist who specialized in trauma, and we made our first appointment for the following week. Nathan called 2 weeks later with updates about Mom. She'd started therapy and was finally accepting how she'd enabled Melissa's behavior for years. She'd written us a long letter that Nathan offered to read. It was actually remorseful, talking about how she'd failed both her daughters by playing favorites and creating this competition. A month into Seattle life, the twins smiled for the first time during a video call with Grace. Real smiles, not just gas. Grace started crying immediately. Then I was crying. Then Daniel was crying. All of us just sobbing at these 2 tiny babies grinning at a phone screen. These perfect moments reminded me why we'd fought so hard to protect them. Then Emma called with news that made my stomach drop. Melissa had lost the pregnancy during what they called a psychotic episode where she'd tried to cut the baby out herself because she believed aliens had put it there. They'd moved her to a long-term psychiatric facility upstate. Even after everything she'd done, I felt sick thinking about her lost baby and her broken mind. Ryan decided to move to Portland with Deline and his new girlfriend. Close enough for the cousins to grow up knowing each other, but far enough from Buffalo's poison. We agreed to meet up once a month for playdates, trying to build something healthy from all this wreckage. 3 months into our Seattle life, the final legal papers arrived by certified mail. All criminal charges resolved with plea deals or convictions. The restraining orders made permanent. Our Buffalo house sold to a nice young couple who had no idea about its history. The last document confirmed Melissa would remain institutionalized indefinitely, declared a danger to herself and others. The war was over, but nobody had really won anything. Going back to work felt weird after everything. The office building downtown had glass doors that reflected my face back at me. And for a second, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. Daniel stayed home with the twins while I sat at my desk, answering emails about marketing campaigns and quarterly reports. My coworkers talked about their weekend plans, complained about traffic. Nobody knew about the viral video or the knife or any of it. During lunch breaks, I pumped milk in the bathroom and checked my phone for pictures Daniel sent of the babies. 3 weeks into the job, my manager asked if I wanted to join the team for drinks, and I actually said yes. Sitting in that bar, listening to normal people talk about normal problems, felt like wearing a costume that finally fit. My therapist's office had beige walls and a white noise machine that made ocean sounds. I sat on her couch, picking at the throw pillow while she waited for me to speak. The words stuck in my throat for 20 minutes before I finally said it out loud. I got pregnant on purpose to hurt my sister. Not for love or wanting a family, but for revenge. The therapist didn't look shocked or disgusted, just nodded and asked how that made me feel now. Empty, I told her. Empty and guilty and somehow still angry. She said healing meant accepting all the ugly parts of how we got here. 6 months in Seattle meant the twins were turning 1. Nathan called asking if he could visit. I almost hung up, but Daniel grabbed the phone and said yes before I could stop him. Nathan showed up at our door holding a wrapped box, looking older than I remembered. He handed me the gift without meeting my eyes and said Carol made it but couldn't come herself. Inside was a quilt made from fabric scraps in every shade of blue and green. Tucked into the corner was a small envelope with Carol's handwriting. I didn't open it. Not then. Nathan played with the twins for an hour, helped them blow out their birthday candles, then left without asking for anything more. The quilt went in the closet, but not the trash. Grace called 2 months later saying she got a job offer in Seattle. Within a week, she had an apartment 3 blocks away and was at our place every evening after work. She brought takeout and held the babies while Daniel and I ate with both hands for once. The twins reached for her whenever she walked in, and she started keeping diapers and formula at her place, just in case. Ryan visited, too, bringing his new girlfriend, who didn't know our history, who just saw us as Ryan's normal sister with a normal family. We had game nights and barbecues, and nobody mentioned Buffalo or baby showers or anything from before. 8 months in Seattle felt like the right time for something we should have done differently the first time. Daniel suggested it while we were washing dishes. Just casual, like he was mentioning the weather. We could renew our vows, he said. Do it right this time. Just us and the people who actually matter. No big production or competition or family drama. I kissed him with soapy hands and said yes. The ceremony happened in our backyard with Grace, Ryan, his girlfriend, and baby Deline, who Grace was babysitting for the afternoon. Ryan's girlfriend recorded it on her phone while the twins tried to eat the flowers Grace picked. Daniel wrote his own vows about choosing each other every day, especially the hard days. I just said I loved him and meant it. After everyone left, we put the twins to bed and slow danced in the kitchen to no music at all. A letter came from Melissa's treatment facility 9 months after we left Buffalo. The doctor's handwriting explained she had been making progress with therapy and medication. She had written apology letters to everyone as part of her treatment. Would we consider supervised video contact in the future? The letter went into the filing cabinet in the folder marked important papers between the twins' birth certificates and our car insurance. Maybe someday I'd answer it. Today wasn't that day. The twins took their first steps on the same rainy Tuesday while I was folding laundry. First, one twin stood up using the coffee table. Then the other saw and had to copy. They wobbled toward each other and collapsed in a pile of giggles. Daniel said something about them already competing, and we both froze. Then he laughed. Competition can be good, he said, like who can give the best hugs or be the kindest. We were writing new rules for our family. Some nights I dreamed about Melissa, but not the woman who held the knife. I dreamed about the sister who taught me to ride my bike in the driveway. The one who split her Halloween candy with me even though I dropped mine in a puddle. The girl who existed before everything went wrong. I woke up crying from those dreams, grieving someone who might have only existed in my memories. Daniel held me without asking questions because some pain doesn't need words. 1 year in Seattle meant 1 year since the baby shower. I posted a single photo on Instagram of the twins laughing at the park. The caption read, "The best revenge is a life well lived." And I turned off comments before anyone could respond. Some stories didn't need audiences anymore. The park near our house had baby swings and a sandbox where the twins could dig for hours. Daniel pushed them while I sat on the bench with my coffee, watching our little family that we built from chaos. A woman sat down next to me and commented on how calm and happy we all looked together. For the first time, I believed her. The twins would know their story someday, when they were old enough to understand that families can break and heal again. They'd know about their aunt and their grandparents and why we lived so far from where Mommy and Daddy grew up. But today, they just knew that Daddy made airplane noises when he pushed them high and Mommy always had goldfish crackers in her purse, and their world was safe and small and full of love. That was enough. That was everything. Have you ever had to cut ties with family, even when it broke your heart, to protect yourself or your own? I'd really love to hear your experiences in the comments below.